Hare Krishna, dear devotees, and welcome back once again to our ongoing lecture series on the glories of our most beloved Sri Vrindavan Dham. But first, Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pashtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nivishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarane. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Also, I'd like to offer my Guru Maharaj another very beautiful prayer. I offer my obeisances to my spiritual master who gave me beautiful Kantimala, effulgent tilak, the beautiful form of devotee, and who offered me his shelter. In one of his hands he is holding my hand, and with his other hand he is holding the lamp of knowledge, which helps me to cross over the dark ocean of the material world. Surdas says, my Guru deserves the greatest respect because only he can rescue one in the blinking of an eye. I bow down to him again and again and again. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So we're continuing with our mini-series on stimulation for ecstatic love, and this will be part 99. In this part of the mini-series, as you know, we've been discussing the transcendental qualities of Lord Krishna that in particular distinguish him from Lord Narayan. In the Nectar of Devotion, the scripture, Nectar of Devotion, which is actually a summary study of Srila Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Prabhupada lists these four transcendental qualities as follows. Number one, Krishna is the performer of wonderful varieties of pastimes, especially his childhood pastimes, which we discussed. He is always surrounded by devotees endowed with a wonderful love of Godhead. He can attract living entities from all over the universe by simply playing on his flute. And he has a wonderful excellence of beauty which cannot be rivaled anywhere in the creation. Now in the original Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Rupa Goswami lists these four qualities in a very poetic way. He does so in the southern section in the first wave. He writes a little differently, but same four qualities, but very poetically. He writes, first of all, Krishna is a wave-filled ocean of the most astonishing display of Leela or pastimes. Number two, he is surrounded by loving associates decorated with incomparably sweet prema. Number three, he plays sweet notes on his flute, which attracts the minds of all in the three worlds. And number four, he astonishes all moving and non-moving entities with the beauty of his form, to which there is no equal or superior. Just very poetic. So today we'll move on to the second of such qualities, namely Krishna is surrounded by loving associates, decorated with incomparably sweet prema, prema meaning love. In his commentary on Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Jiva Goswami, great Acharya, he writes that this incomparable prema or love possessed by the devotees who surround Krishna is called Premna Priya Dikyam. Premna Priya Dikyam. And the deeper meaning of Premna Priya Dikyam is given to us by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur as follows. He says, Atulya Madhurya Vishishta Maha Bhava Prayanta Premna Mandita Priya Mandalo Bhakta Samuho Yena Saha. Very beautiful Sanskrit. He who has a group of eternal associates who are extremely loving and decorated with unprecedented prema all the way up to the level of Mahabhava. That's the description of that type of love. He who has a group of eternal associates who are extremely loving and decorated with unprecedented prema all the way up to the level of Mahabhav, the deeper definition. Now in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 2.1 verse 211, Sri Rupa Goswami gives us an example of the sweetness of Krishna's devotees, because sometimes we need examples. We have the philosophy, but we need to see that philosophy inherent in the characteristics of devotees. So he quotes seeing the sweetness, how to see the sweetness in devotees. He quotes a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 31st chapter, it's verse 15. He writes about Krishna, when you go off to the forest during the day, a tiny fraction of a second becomes like a millennium for us, because we cannot see you. And even when we can eagerly look upon your beautiful face, as lovely, so lovely with its adornment of curly locks, our pleasure is hindered by our eyelids, which were fashioned by the foolish Creator. So, just how is this an example of the sweetness of Krishna's devotees? Well, Srila Jiva Goswami explains in his commentary that this example shows sweetness in the form of the eagerness of Krishna's devotees. Such eagerness is unheard of in devotees in other incarnations. The Brajabasis are hankering so much to be with Krishna that when they're separated from Krishna, one moment feels like a million years. So this is the characteristic of their sweetness. Now, an interesting point here is that in that verse, the gopis are calling the Creator, meaning the secondary Creator, Lord Brahma. This universe ultimately is created by God, but he gives the creation, the ability to create, to his devotee, Lord Brahma. So the gopis are calling Brahma, who created everything in this universe, foolish. Why? Because the blinking of their eyelids causes an obstacle in their viewing of Krishna. In other words, they're just absorbed in the samadhi of meditating on the beautiful form of Krishna, Satchidananda Vigraha. His form is eternal, full of knowledge and bliss. And that form of Krishna never ages beyond 16 years of age. Although he's the original person, he remains very beautiful. And because of their prema, because of their love for him, they want to meditate on him perpetually. Sometimes they have to blink their eyes, and for a moment they can't see him. So they're cursing Lord Brahma. Brahma, what have you done? You've created eyelids that blink for a moment, so our meditation on Krishna is disturbed. This is bhakti. Now further research reveals that this is actually a characteristic of the stage of prema or love called Ruta Mahabhava. This is all the science of love. It's called Ruta Mahabhava. Sri Rupa Goswami has defined many characteristics of Ruta Mahabhava in his book, Ujjvala Nilamani, chapter 14, verses 161 to 162. And the first characteristic is Nimesha Sahata. Nimesha Sahata. This is the inability to tolerate the blinking of the eyes. This is a sign of prema, that you cannot tolerate, I have to close my eyes for a moment, I can't see Krishna. And this shows that the gopis were experiencing this stage of Ruta Mahabhava when they spoke that verse. We don't just philosophically accept them as great devotees, we can see their characteristics in that way. They're so upset with Brahma. So the acharyas say this is a brilliant example of the sweetness of Krishna's devotees. Love should be sweet. So their sweetness is in their anxiety. I'm blinking in for a moment, I can't see my beloved. Like that. Another example of the superiority and the sweetness of Krishna's devotees is given by Srila Jiva Goswami as follows. He writes, Aho bhagyam, Nanda Gopa brajok shaham, yan mitram parama nandam, purnam brahma shanatanam. How greatly fortunate are Nanda Maharaj, Krishna's father, the Cowherd men, and all the inhabitants of Brajabhumi, Vrindavan. There's no limit to their good fortune because the absolute truth, the source of transcendental bliss, the eternal supreme Brahman, has become their friend. First we hear the Aishvarya, the awe and veneration of God. Yes, he's the absolute truth. Yes, he's the source of transcendental bliss. He's the eternal supreme Brahman. But that person has become their friend. This is Krishna. This is bhakti. That verse is from Srimad Bhagavatam 10:14, verse 32. So in that example, because we have example and we have precept, so in that example it is shown that Krishna has become the friend of the Brajabasis. Why? This is because of the sweetness of his devotees and the relationship that they cherish with him. Love is reciprocal. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, all of them as they surrender unto me, to that degree I give myself to them. So another example given by Jiva Goswami is from Srimad Bhagavatam 10:9-20. Nemam verni cho na bhavo nashir apyanga samshraya prasadam lebi ye gopi yatta prapta vimuktidat. I love this verse. Neither Lord Brahma, nor Lord Shiva, not even Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, who is always the better half of the Supreme Lord, can obtain from the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, the deliverer from this material world, such mercy as was received by Mother Yashoda. So someone may argue, what's so special about Mother Yashoda? Didn't Krishna in other incarnations, like Lord Ramachandra, also have a mother and father? Lord Ram, Jai Sri Ram, Sitaram, Lakshman, Hanuman, we know Lord Ramachandra. He also had mother and father. So why does Sri Shukadev Goswami glorify Mother Yashoda so much? So it's interesting, in reply, the great devotee poet Sri Harisuri, who we've been quoting for years now, he writes, you have to listen carefully here, to whom he gave pleasure as a child, like Dasharatha and Kaushalya and Ram Leela. He did not give pleasure through his omnipotence. And to whom he gave pleasure through his omnipotence, like the four Kumaras, for example, he did not give them pleasure as a child. However, amongst all these devotees, the best example is Mother Yashoda, to whom the Lord gave endless pleasure through his omnipotence, as well as through his child acts, his naughtiness. In other words, Mother Yashoda is the only parent who saw Krishna's omnipotence, because she saw in his mouth, his friends accused him of eating dirt. So she looked in his mouth and she saw the opulence of creation. So she saw the omnipotence. At the same time, she saw Krishna's childish nature, playing as a small boy at the same time. Very deep, this bhakti. We don't just say bhakti, love, devotion. There's a science, there's a philosophy. One has to learn the philosophy first. Work now, samadhi later. So the acharyas say that during the Damodar Leela, meaning the childhood pastimes of Krishna, as this month is coming up, Damodar, we'll be singing a lot about Krishna's childhood pastimes. Krishna showed his omnipotence. Acharyas say by refusing to get bound by Mother Yashoda. He's all-powerful. At the same time, in that pastime, he's crying like an ordinary child. So this good fortune is not available to any other parent of God or Bhagavan. Now another example of the specialty of Krishna's relationship with the Brajabasis and the sweetness of their love is seen in this verse from Srimad Bhagavatam 10, 12, 11. And I quote here, "In this way all the Cowherd boys used to play with Krishna, who is the source of the Brahman effulgence for the jnanis." Some people want to worship the energy of God. This is called the effulgence. The effulgence that comes from the transcendental form of the Lord. It's magnificent. So the Cowherd boys used to play with Krishna, who's the source of that Brahman effulgence for the jnanis, desiring to merge into that effulgence, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead for devotees who have accepted eternal servitorship, and who, for ordinary persons, is but another ordinary child. But the Cowherd boys have accumulated the results of pious activities for many lives, and thus they were able to associate with Krishna as Cowherd boys, with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. How can one explain their great fortune? Some people want to merge into the energy of God. Some people want to become God. How can you become God? God is always God. You can't become God. But the Cowherd boys, they just want to have sweet, loving relationships with Krishna as Cowherd boys. This is Braj. This is very special. And finally, the sweetest of the sweet devotees are the Cowherd girls of Braj, the gopis, as seen in the following verse from Srimad Bhagavatam 10:47-60, of whom Srimati Radhika, Vrindavaneshwari Srimati Radharani, is the sweetest of the sweet, because she has Mahabhav. She has the greatest love for Krishna. Therefore, we want to love Krishna. So therefore, first of all, we're praying to Radha. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare is a vocative form of Hara, which means Sri Radha. So, my dear Radharani, please engage me in Krishna's service. So these gopis, they have the sweetest love. And that's exemplified in the following verse from Bhagavatam. When Lord Sri Krishna was dancing with the gopis in Rasa Leela, transcendental pastime, the gopis were embraced by the arms of the Lord. This transcendental favor was never bestowed even upon Lakshmi Devi, the goddess of fortune, or to any other consorts in the spiritual world, meaning Vaikuntha, because the spiritual world is vast, there's many planets. Krishna lives on different planets in different incarnations, and he has his devotees there. But all those consorts of the Lord can't compare to the gopis of Vrindavan. Indeed, never was such a thing even imagined, in other words, dancing with Krishna, by the most beautiful girls in Svargaloka, in the heavenly planets, whose bodily luster and aroma resembled the beauty and fragrance of a lotus flower. The denizens on the higher planets, they don't need deodorant, they don't need to spray perfume. They have bodies, not transcendental bodies, this is not the spiritual world, but the higher planets. They're so pure, they're so pious, that the fragrances are like lotus flowers. And what to speak of worldly women who are very beautiful according to material estimation? Nothing compare to the gopis who are able to dance with Krishna in the spiritual world. So, we can easily conclude that Krishna is always surrounded by loving devotees decorated with incomparably sweet prema, or love. Now, I recently heard a lecture by Srila Prabhupada. He summarized this, because elegance is truth spoken concisely. You don't need to have a long-winded lecture. Get to the point. So we're speaking how, last few minutes, how Krishna is always surrounded by devotees. So eloquence is truth spoken concisely. So Srila Prabhupada summarized this saying, you'll never see a picture of Krishna alone. Krishna is always with his devotees. If not like the Cowherd boys, the Cowherd girls, then his mother and father, Nanda Yashoda, or a peacock, or a cow, who are also self-realized souls. Variety is the spice of life. So when you see pictures of Vrindavan or paintings of Vrindavan, actually the material world is just a perverted reflection of the spiritual world. So what we see here is a nasty reflection of what's there. So there's also animals, but they're self-realized yogis in the spiritual world. You'll never see. Krishna's always engaged in some rasa, some loving pastimes with his devotees. You'll never see a picture of Krishna alone. Now the medieval poet, Purushottam Das, he's from the Haridas Sampradaya here in Vrindavan. He describes this idea or this concept of God always being surrounded by his loving devotees as follows. And I just discovered it recently in the library. Vrindavan Research Institute in Vrindavan. He writes, this will probably melt your heart. Oh brother, look at the darling of Braj. Who's the darling of Braj? Krishna. Oh brother, look at the darling of Braj. He's surrounded by countless groups of strong, beautiful-looking cowherd boys during the daytime. And in the afternoon, he's surrounded by his cows. When he jumps into the sweet waters of the Jamuna River, which encircles Vrindavan, the poet says, all the water jivas. I thought, wow, that's the fish. Jiva means a living entity, right? So the poet, he's so incredible, he calls them water jivas. Fish, they swim around him. When he plays his flute, Vamsi, all the air animals, he calls them air animals, that means birds, surround him. You see sometimes when Krishna is playing the flute, the parrots are flying, peacocks are flying. Numerous servants sacrificed their everything in the palace of Maharaj Nanda, where Krishna lives, for just a glimpse of his sidelong glances. Devotees satisfied if Krishna just gives a glance to that devotee. That satisfies the devotee. During the full moon nights in that mystic forest, flocks of gopikas dance around him. Isn't that beautiful? During the full moon night in the mystic forest. What's the mystic forest? Vrindavan. There's so many mystical things happen in Braj. Flocks of gopikas, meaning the cowherd girls, the gopis, the pure-hearted cowherd girls who love Krishna more than anyone's ever been loved before. But that love is on a transcendental platform. They dance around him. The poet goes on. Not only this, even when he is sleeping, the Panam Yogis in the forest surround him in his dreams through their unbreakable meditations, because the yogis are meditating on the feature of Krishna within their hearts. God's in the spiritual world. He's all-pervading by his energies, but he also expands in the heart of every living entity, waiting for them to have a spiritual awakening them, and then guide them on the path back home to the spiritual world. So the Panam Yogis, they're meditating on him. So even when he's sleeping, the Panam Yogis in the forest surround him in his dreams through their unbreakable meditation. Is this not real poetry? This is poetry which melts the heart. There's that famous verse we've quoted a number of times, that what is the use of a bowman's arrow unless it pierces the heart of his enemy? So what is the use of poetry, the saying goes, unless it melts the heart of the listener? And that poetry is transcendental poetry. So the poet concludes, Purushottam Das says, by the mercy of Guru, one can also surround Krishna eternally. Meaning what? The Guru delivers us from the ignorance of material existence. And with knowledge, he reveals the spiritual world and the path back home to the spiritual world. How does the Guru do it? Not by some mystic blessing. He just reveals knowledge. That's the duty of the Guru. He lights up the path of how to get back to the spiritual world with knowledge. So our main connection with our spiritual masters is through hearing from them. Yes, we want their physical association. There's Vani and Vapu. That inspires us. But what's most important is the instructions they give. And we have to follow those instructions to the T. And where will that lead? That will lead to that world, which is eternal, full of knowledge and bliss. It's a no-brainer to use a modern terminology. Is this world eternal? No. Is it full of knowledge? No. Some, but mostly just material knowledge, a little bit of spiritual knowledge. Is it full of bliss? Well, that's highly debatable. This is a world of duality, up and down, black and white, boy and girl, happiness and distress. So an intelligent person doesn't want plan B, he wants plan A, back home, back to the spiritual world. So this is a Guru. He can take us home to knowledge. Now, one of my favorite Brajbasi poets, meaning Basi means one who lives in Vrindavan, as you know, is a poet named Lalita Kishore, who also describes very nicely how Krishna is never alone. Krishna is always hankering for the love of his devotees, and the devotees are hankering for the love of Krishna. It's like almost a transcendental competition. Who can love one more? That's love. Love in this world, the hard facts, it comes and it goes. But love in the spiritual world, ad infinitum. It's always increasing. So he also, Lalita Kishore, he also describes very nicely how Krishna is always surrounded by loving devotees in one of his poems. I also found this in the library, the Vrindavan Research Institute. Listen to this. He writes, once Parvati, who's Parvati? The wife of Mahadev, Shiva. Om Namo Shivaya Namaha. Once Parvati came to have darshan of her husband, Lord Shiva, where? On top of Mount Kailash. On top of Mount Kailash. Where he was sitting on a deerskin with his eyes closed in deep meditation. Now seeing her, Lord Shiva's bull, Nandi, said to Shiva, Mahadev, O Lord of the three worlds, please look at us, meaning him and Parvati, with your eyes full of mercy. Your graceful wife is standing here with her palms joined, wanting to be the object of your kind glance. Her ears are charmingly decorated by sun and moon shaped earrings. Who wants to hear anything else? What is it? Her ears are charmingly decorated by sun and moon shaped earrings, which control time and give benedictions to all the planets. O Lord of all the avadutas, what does avaduta mean? It means a person who's mad in ecstasy with samadhi, meditation on the divine. O Lord of all those persons who are avadutas, please look at us, the devotees who have accepted your shelter. Why would one take shelter of Lord Shiva? Because Vaishnavanam yata Shambhu. It's described in Srimad Bhagavatam, Grantaraj, the king of all scriptures, that Lord Shiva is the greatest of all devotees of Krishna. He's the greatest of all devotees of Krishna. He's a great servant of Krishna. He's, in this material world, his service is to be in charge of the mode of ignorance. There's ignorance, passion, and goodness. So he's in charge of the mode of ignorance. So Shiva appears in that form, long dreadlocks, covered by ashes and from the crematorium and snakes and so forth and so on. It's a service he accepts very humbly. And those in the mode of ignorance are attracted to him. And they buzz around him, they fly with him when he's going in his sevas. And by his association being a Vaishnava of Krishna, they become Vaishnavas. No easy task to take someone from the mode of ignorance or passion to the mode of goodness, which itself is a stepping stone to transcendence. So this is Shiva. So, O Lord of all avadutas, please look at us, the devotees who have accepted your shelter. Hearing this, Lord Shiva opened his eyes. How many eyes? He had 3 eyes. 2 eyes, and he has the third eye. What is the third eye? Tattvadarshi. He can see things as they are. He's never bewildered by the temporary miserable nature of this world, although it may be advertised as something wonderful. Oh, he understands. And he knows the path back home to the spiritual world. So this is the third eye. People don't really know, they talk about the third eye. The third eye is knowledge. How to get out of this temporary world into the spiritual world. That's the third eye. So he smiled. He smiled at everyone. And he saw that his dear wife Parvati was shivering in the cold wind of Mount Kailash. I've experienced that cold wind. Actually, with many of you know, with a group of devotees, we went to Tibet. And we traveled from Lhasa to Mount Kailash. Took many days. And we did, they called a Kora, there in Tibet. We walked around. You can't walk on the mountain because it's too sacred. No one's ever walked on Kailash. We walked around. Took 4 or 5 days. You go up like this to 5,500 meters. You go back down. A rigorous climb. Mystical. Seeing Mount Kailash, so being so close to Shiva and Parvati and Nandi. Of course, we're struggling sadhakas. We're trying to become enlightened, but even there we felt the presence of Lord Shiva. It's hard for to explain. You could feel his mercy there. And I was praying, please make me a devotee like you, fully immersed in Krishna consciousness. So it was freezing cold. Freezing cold. So when Shiva awoke from his meditation, he saw Parvati. She was shivering in the cold. So he called her, and she sat on his lap. So then Parvati asked him, this is so wonderful, through the Shastras, through the scriptures, through the eyes of the saints, we can see things that could never be seen with mundane vision. How blessed we are to have the association of saints who have this tattvadarshini, this knowledge, and who know the scriptures. A saintly person doesn't make things up. He just repeats what's there in these eternal Shastras and sets the example how to realize them. So here we go. Parvati asked him, O Lord of Kailash mountain, why do you like to stay in isolation, away from everybody? What is the reason of this ekanta isolation? It's described in Sanskrit. Ekanta means far away from the mass of the people, no disturbance. So Shiva smiled, and he said, O fortunate lady, listen to me carefully. To meet the son of Nanda Maharaj, Krishna, we all need to isolate from time to time and meditate on the divine pastimes of Krishna, as Krishna had the pastimes here in Vrindavan 5,000 years ago. He is the supreme controller. While doing so, in my ekanta meditation, in my solitude here on top of Mount Kailash, while doing so, I say to my mind, O mind, become a cow in his herd. This is Shiva's meditation. My dear mind, become a cow in Krishna's herd of cows in Vrindavan. O my heart, become a garland which hangs on his chest, Krishna's chest. O my moon crown, because you always see on Shiva, he has his dreadlock, his top knot. There we see Mother Ganges flowing down into the material creation, because she flowed with such power she would destroy the universe. So Shiva stepped in and took the Ganges on his head, because he's so powerful, there's no problem. He stopped that powerful Ganges and she flowed more smoothly. So we could go to Rishikesh and bathe in her purifying waters. All glories to Mahadev, Lord Shiva. So there's also on that top knot the moon, the half moon there in his hair. So he said, "Oh, my moon crown, become cooling sandalwood paste on Krishna's lotus feet. Oh, my snake armlet," we talked about the snakes, right? "Become a turban on Nanda Lal." Lal means little Krishna. "Oh, my damru." What's a damru? I've seen in Varanasi. It's the drum that the Shiva bhaktas have. They have the trident, and so he has the original one, Shiva. So, "Oh, my damru," two-sided drum, you become ankle bells on Krishna's lotus feet. "Oh, my dreadlocks," jata. You know, people like to have dreadlocks. It's like, cool. Who's got the original dreadlocks? Lord Shiva, with their transcendental. "Oh, my jat," become an asana for Giridhari. Who's Giridhari? Giridhari means Krishna who lifted Govardhan Hill as a 7-year-old boy. He's God, but he retains his godhood even in his childhood. So, "Oh, my dreadlocks," you become an asana. Asana means a cushion, like I'm sitting on a cushion now. Become an asana for Giridhari. "Oh, my soul," become dust at his lotus feet. So Parvati said, "Oh, Swami, Because sometimes husband is called Swami, meaning one who can control the senses. Oh Swami, you are Yogi Raj. Raj means king. So you're king of yogis, because you can sit here on Mount Kailash and not be disturbed by the material element, and you're constantly fixed. Eke Kudunandana, on the lotus feet of Krishna. Please describe those who are fortunate devotees of Krishna. You've described so many things to me. I'm particularly interested. Who are the fortunate devotees of Krishna? Because without the devotees, we can't approach Krishna. Just like if you want to meet the Prime Minister or the President, who can go? But if you meet a family member, or you meet a friend of the Prime Minister, you're easily introduced. So how are we introduced to Krishna? Through his devotees. Like one time, our Prabhupada said in his humility, I do not know who is Krishna, I only know my spiritual master. So she's saying, please describe those who are fortunate devotees of Krishna. So Mahadev said, it's very beautiful. O Parvati, one cannot understand the great fortune of Lord Krishna's devotees. One who has had the association of his devotee, not Krishna, but his devotee, even for a single moment, can get free from the clutches of the god of death, Yamaraj. He went on. Once Narada traveled through all the divine planets to see who's the most fortunate devotee, because devotees are scattered throughout this material creation. Not that they belong here. It's like we're strangers in strange land, but they come here out of their causeless mercy to enlighten us as to who we are, who is God, and what is our eternal relationship with Him. So they're scattered, not only here on the earth planet, higher planets, there's devotees. Lower planets, who wants to go there? Devotees will go out of their compassion to enlighten throughout the 14 worlds. So one who gets the association of his devotees, even for a single moment, lavamata, that person has the opportunity to become freed from reincarnation, from samsara, the repetition of birth and death. So then he tells the story. He says, once Narada, the great sage, traveled through all the divine planets to see who's the most fortunate devotee. Out of all these devotees, who's the most fortunate? So he came to Brahma, who we mentioned in the beginning of this lecture, and told him, the most fortunate devotee is Indradev, who is the master of the heavenly planets. But Brihaspati is even more fortunate than Indra, because he's the master of Indra, he's the guru of Indra. But the divine goddess, Savitri, is more famous because she's the mother of Brihaspati. And more than Savitri, the sun god is fortunate because he's the husband of Mother Savitri. More than the sun god, Lord Vishnu, incarnation of Krishna, is fortunate because his one eye is the sun and the other is the moon. More fortunate than Vishnu is Krishna, because he controls Lord Vishnu and all the devatas. But more fortunate than Krishna are his devotees, who always surround him in loving devotional service. O Father Brahma, we should all serve the lotus feet of such devotees who play, fight, eat, sleep, and relish every moment with the flute player Krishna. That's my favorite. The lotus feet of such devotees, what are they doing? Are they just in meditation in some caves somewhere? Are they merged into the effulgence of God? No, they're playing with Him. They're fighting with Him. Like boys will be boys. They're eating with Him, they're sleeping with Him. And they relish every moment with the flute player, Krishna, from Sridhara, he who carries the flute. So Brahma nodded his head in agreement and joined his palms, remembering the lotus feet of Krishna's devotees. Krishna says elsewhere, one who says he's my devotee is not my devotee. One who says he's the devotee of my devotee, he's my devotee. So Shiva continued, O Parvati, My mind always serves the devotees of the Lord who allow me to enter into the land of love. What's the land of love? Disneyland? Some famous park somewhere? Thailand? Hawaii? No, the land of love is Sri Vrindavan, where the breeze of dedication flows limitlessly. With the breeze of dedication, meaning everyone is dedicating themselves to this naughty boy Krishna, it flows limitlessly. So Parvati said, it's back and forth, O Lord of my heart, this is, O Lord of my heart, she's the consort of Shiva. O Lord of my heart, glories to you, who gave me the best of ornaments, the lotus feet of Krishna's devotees. So this poet, Lalita Kishori, concludes, may my shelter always be in the association of Braja Bhaktas, who for many days together get lost in meditation on the loving pastimes of Radha and Krishna, sitting in the Braj Renu. What's the Braj? In Sanskrit, Renu means dust. So who wants to sit in dust? Like nobody. But Braj Renu means the dust of Vrindavan. And what is the dust of Vrindavan? The dust of Vrindavan is sacred because Krishna walks with Sri Radha and the gopis or his cowherd friends all over this transcendental land. And his lotus feet touch this dust and it becomes transformed into kripa or mercy. So therefore when we first come to Vrindavan, what do? We roll in the dust. A materialistic person may think we're crazy. Yes, we want to become crazy with love for Krishna. So this dust of Vrindavan is very special. It's one of the things that grant us entrance into Vrindavan. You can't just come here on a bus or a car or a horse cart. You have to come with a pure consciousness to see things as they are. So to come here and see Vrindavan, we need the mercy of the dust of Vrindavan. So she says, may my shelter always be in the association of Braja Bhaktas who for many days together get lost in meditation on the loving pastimes of Radha Krishna while sitting in the Braj Renu, the dust of Vrindavan, and drinking the water of the Jamuna as they constantly sing the holy names of the Lord, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So in conclusion, let us hear from one of the 6 Goswamis, the 6 disciples of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu who came to Vrindavan, and as we know, we have many pastimes here. One of those Goswamis is Srila Raghunath Das Goswami, who also glorifies this principle of associating with devotees in his Sri Shva Sankalpa Prakasha Stotra, verse 1. It's really nice. He writes, one who has never worshipped even once the dust that sprinkles from Sri Radha's lotus feet, who never took shelter even once of her abode, Sri Vrindavan Dham, which is marked with the lotus feet, who never spoke even once to the devotees, colored in her love. How foolish are they who think that such a person can plunge into the mystical sea of nectar that is Shyam Krishna. Well, thank you, Prabhu, for giving me this opportunity to share with you all this nectar of Sri Vrindavan Dham, as we've mentioned many times. My dear godbrother, His Holiness Shivaram Maharaj, in his research about this transcendental abode, this where love reigns supreme, he wrote there's 60 billion holy places in Vrindavan. So as we traverse this transcendental land through these lectures, through the eyes of Guru and Krishna and the saints, let us relish every moment, because as Chanakya Pandit, the great logician, said, human form of life is so valuable that even one moment cannot be gained back for all the gold in the world. So we have to utilize our time properly. And one of the best ways to utilize our time is to organize ourselves in such a way that Shravanam Kirtanam, we have time for hearing and chanting about Krishna, because that brings what? Smaranam. It brings remembrance of Krishna. And if we practice remembering Krishna, and it becomes natural, as it will, we're practicing, but practice makes perfect. Then, when that moment comes that we have to leave these mortal frames, we'll be naturally thinking of Krishna. And yam yam vapi smaram vavam. That meditation, gained after many minutes, hours, weeks, months, years, it will bear the fruit of prema, love. And that love will be our ticket back home, back to Godhead. So this is the best use of our time. We're busy as bees in this world, and that's required. But everyone should come to Vrindavan and hear these pastimes and wander in these forests of Vrindavan. Even though it's changing, because it's Kali Yuga, it's still Braj. And we're going to start our Kartik Parikrama in a couple of days, so please all of you say your prayers. We have about 350 devotees with us, and other devotees, my Parikrama Guru, Dina Banda, will be going out, and different godbrothers and godsisters will be taking different groups about. If you can ever make it for Kartik Parikrama, please join us. If not, we'll be speaking about Vrindavan for as long as we have breath in this body. So thank you very much. See you next Friday. Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram ki, Shri Shri Radha Shamba Sundar ki, Vrindavaneshwari Srimati Radharani ki, Mayapur Dham ki, Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki, Shri Krishna Sankirtan Yogi ki, Nitai Gaur Premanandi, Jai Jai Sri Sri Radhe, Sharm, Sharm, Sharm. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, the revealer of the Dham.